AI is currently on everyone's lips, and of course, it would be cool to take advantage of it in your own smart home. That's why I want to show you today how you can connect Home Assistant with OpenAI to make using your smart home even better. More details after the intro. Enjoy. Before we jump into the setup, here are a few limitations of the whole system. Currently, it is still not possible to control the smart home through OpenAI. However, there has been a voice output since, I believe, last year, and it can actually be quite well fed with OpenAI. This can be very practical in a variety of scenarios. Interacting with OpenAI alone already feels significantly better than most voice assistants we are currently using. So Google Home, Amazon Alexa, or even Apple HomeKit can completely pale in comparison to the artificial intelligence that, when paired with Home Assistant, can produce truly exceptional voice outputs. I also know many people who have created special automations to make voice announcements. For example, a calendar output, appointments that are scheduled for today, the current weather, and so on. All of these things can be significantly improved with OpenAI. It should be noted that the integration is not entirely free, but it is super cheap, and theoretically, there is also the possibility of running an AI on your own computer. But first of all, you need extremely powerful computing power or specialized hardware, and from a purely mathematical perspective, it probably wouldn't be worth it at all. So at this point, it is actually a good idea to set up OpenAI in such a way that you can integrate it into Home Assistant. However, before we try it out, we obviously need to set it up, and that's what we will do now. So let's just jump into the Home Assistant installation, and here we find the OpenAI conversation option under Devices and Services in the settings when we add an integration. When we click on it, we need to enter our API key, which we first have to obtain from OpenAI itself. Of course, you need an account for this, and next, you must log into the developer platform with the account. Here we can then create a new API key under API keys after we have entered the payment information. We can name it somehow, don't actually need to change anything in the settings here, and can click on Create Secret Key. We copy this key and can simply paste it here, and after we click on Submit, OpenAI Conversation should appear below, and we can configure everything here. Configuration is indeed important, as we can provide OpenAI with information relevant to any question we ask, which can be crucial for improving the voice output. This means specifically that OpenAI does not have continuous access to our entire smart home and is not aware of all changes. Instead, we essentially send all the complete information about our smart home before each request, and the response to our question can then incorporate this data. And which data we pass from Home Assistant to OpenAI can be configured here. By default, the configuration looks something like this. This is a smart home that is controlled by Home Assistant. Here is an overview of all the different zones we currently have and all the devices that are located within them. All states, such as which devices are disabled, and so on and so forth. And finally, the information. If you want to control everything remotely, then end this request and say that it should be done through the Home Assistant app, because it is currently just not technically possible. What I have done now is to copy this example from the developer tools under template, because in addition to all the states of my devices and so on, I would also like to pass on the current weather information. And funny enough, the example set here in the templates is actually exactly that, namely the temperature, when the sun has set, and so on and so forth. So we can actually copy this entire string here, go to the settings for devices and services, configure OpenAI Conversation, and simply paste it down here. As a result, we have now included not only all the devices and states, but also the weather information, which in my opinion encompasses all the information one might need. Finally, we can also select the model. Of course, ChatGPT 4 is currently on everyone's lips, but one must also consider that different models also mean different pricing models. And as far as I know, the Turbo model is currently the cheapest. Since I don't need super accurate information, that's enough for me, and I will leave the ER model currently set to the default. Now we can almost test everything. The only thing we still need to do is adjust the default pipeline for the assistant in the settings under Voice Assistants to 2021. Specifically, we need to select OpenAI as the conversation agent so that OpenAI can be used at all. Now we click on Update. In my case, I have already set this up for the Home Assistant Cloud Automation. You just need to see which ones you have set up here. In my case, I use this for the Home Assistant Cloud Assist pipeline because I selected it here. But you could also use this with the regular Home Assistant pipeline. So to test this out, I would say, let's just use the regular browser here. Then I go to the overview here, click on this chat icon, and can then ask a question, what is the weather like today? And then I just get this response, but I simply need a temperature. And then we have the temperature of 25 degrees. That was basically part 1. We could now talk to OpenAI here just like we would do over Chat OpenAI. It becomes even more exciting when we add an automatic announcement. So here in the settings under automations, I have created a sample automation for you that is triggered when the sun rises. Of course, you could also add a lot of other triggers here, for example, the coffee machine, a light switch, the location, so when I enter my home and so on and so forth. Then just simply make the call to the conversation and wait. This works by clicking on Execute Action Service here and then entering conversation as the service here. And then there is already conversation processing here. I still need to select the agent again, specifically OpenAI, and then a response variable. So after everything has been executed, which variable should it be stored in? Here, for example, you could insert agent. And next, we need to output everything. Again, execute the service here. As a service, I select TTS and choose text-to-speech. You can then select here, as an entity, to which device everything should be sent. In my case, I'm going to send this to my Google Home, specifically to this one. And as a message for 2001, I now need to insert a variable here. It then automatically jumps into the text editor. Unfortunately, a variable cannot be inserted in the visual editor. And then we need to insert the variable agent, response, speech, plain, speech here. The answer is basically stored there. You can just save it. The only part you need to change is the variable at the front. Depending on how you named your response variable, 2001, yes, and that's basically it. I will delete this now because I have already integrated it once. And since I don't want to wait until sunset, I simply go here to the 3 dots and click on Execute to run the automation without waiting for sunrise. And what I forgot to mention is, of course, the text. So what is it supposed to answer for me? Here I simply have the light switch turned on and the current weather inserted. Theoretically, you could ask about any state in your smart home, and of course, since I just asked about the weather, also about the weather. However, I would recommend that if you want to query states, you should actually configure OpenAI Conversation in the settings under Devices and Services and remove this part down here, because otherwise it will tell you every time that you should use the Home Assistant app when you want to control devices. Otherwise, that's definitely it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe even found it helpful. If so, I would really appreciate a rating. And then I would say, if you want more videos on the topic of AI, feel free to write it in the comments. And finally, I would say, see you next week for a new video. Until then, take care and goodbye.